Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? How's it going, everybody? We have people tuning in from YouTube, people tuning in from Facebook. Let me just make sure people on Facebook have access to this, people from Instagram, people kind of from all over. But how are we doing? How are we doing, everybody? Put in the chat where you're from. Put in the chat where you're from, what country, what city. Let's see where people are tuning in from. Just add it to the chat there while I share this link to Facebook. Share. Okay, we have France in the house. Emmanuel. Welcome, Emmanuel. Albert from Germany. Miguel the Goat. Thank you. Thank you. Gerlind from Germany. We have Salt Lake City. Sweden is here. Who else is here? Who else is here? Just sharing this to Facebook. Make sure nobody misses this. Tell all your friends, tell everybody. Okay, everyone. All right, give me like 15 seconds, just putting this in the Facebook group. Alrighty. We have Michigan in the house. We have Switzerland, responding Bettersville. That's a new one. I haven't visited that place, or maybe I have. Maybe I actually have visited that place. I think I was living there plenty of my recovery, responding Bettersville. Got London in the house, North UK, Surf City, North Carolina. Guys, ready to learn today? We're going to learn a bunch of recovery strategies and tips. I'm going to talk about how to stop crashing, as well as how progress cycles work. This might be a refresher for a handful of people. I've definitely covered these in many videos on the channel, also on previous live calls. But I'm also curious. Let's see how long you guys have been dealing with this for. So how long have you been dealing with CFS for? Just put in the chat. How many months or how many years, maybe even decades? Four years, okay. Jenny's been dealing with this for 4 years. Almost 10 years. 3-ish years. We have 3 years, 11 months, 30 years with better periods within. A couple of decades, but worse in the last 5 years. Okay, so a little bit of everything across the board. Marie, 55 plus. Nice to see you, Marie Grace. Nice to see you in here. Cool. Okay, so all across the board. So we're gonna see if we can get this thing solved in the next 12 months, because it's definitely possible to turn this thing around. I mean, we've seen some pretty severe cases, and people make tons and tons of progress, you know, and go from bedridden or housebound or couchbound to getting their lives back like well within a year. And sure, you may have some symptoms by the end of that year, but you know, you're living life. Like, you could travel, you could hike, you could pretty much do all the things that a normal person would do. So let's jump into the first topic here. Let's jump into the whole topic of crashing, right? Or how to avoid crashing. And first of all, I want to make the distinction between crashing and adjustment periods, right? I have one specific video I made on the YouTube channel called "What is the difference between adjustment periods and crashes?" And if you haven't watched that yet, I would definitely recommend watching that. I'm actually going to put it in the chat here. Well, I'm actually going to share it with you guys. Let me actually share my screen. Share screen. It is this one. If you guys haven't watched this video yet, I would highly, highly recommend watching this. The difference between an adjustment period and a crash, because most people, before learning about these recovery principles and strategies, they think every time they flare up, they're in a crash, but it's not true, right? So when I'm talking about a crash in this sense, let me stop sharing. When I'm talking about a crash in this sense, I'm talking about, overdoing it and then relapsing, losing all the progress you made, and then not really bouncing back to the next level. Because if you do it right, the way it works is you increase activity, you have some kind of flare up, but then you dial it back a little bit, right? We call that an adjustment period. Your body is adjusting to the new level of stimulus. Just like if you are working out, right? You need to train your body to become stronger. The way you do that is by slowly adding on stimulus, but in a very strategic manner. You don't just go out and lift as many weights as you can and kind of hope for the best. Same thing in recovery, right? We want to be strategic about how you're adding in activity into your life, right? So a crash is essentially when you overdo it, right? How do you know you're overdoing it? Well, I usually give the general advice is when your mindset starts getting shaky during an activity and you start doubting yourself and the fear starts coming in, that's a good time to dial it back, right? That's a good time to slow down or kind of walk away from the activity, right? And that's a big thing with recovery is you don't have to fully commit to activities unless you're, going across the city or going somewhere that's out of your control, where you don't control the environment. Yeah, it can be pretty tricky. That's why it's best to stay in environments that you have more control over in the beginning, because at least you can hit the eject button, every time if things get too intense, right? And so I actually want to make this a little more interactive so I could answer direct questions coming from you guys. So when we talk about crashing, it's typically from overdoing it. How many of you guys here watching right now, just put in the chat, feel like you're overdoing it, or what is kind of your roadblock for increasing activity? Most people, they get some energy, they start to feel a little bit better, and then they kind of overcommit to things or overdo things or bite off a little more than they could chew. And then by the time they realize they've done too much, it's kind of too late because they're already done it. And also a lot of times there's a delayed effect. So you may be doing an activity and you may not feel, it may not kind of hit you until after or the next day, right? So just put in the chat there, what are some kind of things you guys struggled with in terms of increasing activity without kind of having a huge setback, or taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back? What are you guys struggling with right now? Here's a great question. I've been much better for the past 6 months, but now dealing with insomnia and debilitating symptoms. Could it still be an adjustment? Is my baseline still in reach? So just the fact that you've been much better for the past 6 months, and now it sounds like you're having some different symptoms come up, like insomnia. That's actually a pretty good sign. We call that symptom rotation. So essentially, once you start making a bunch of progress, we've seen this a lot with people, your body actually starts to give you random symptoms that you weren't having, right? And it's basically like your brain trying to pull out any tricks in the books, any even old tricks, old symptoms, and bringing them up to try to stop you in your tracks, right? To try to keep you in fight or flight mode or survival mode, because that's what the symptoms are for. It's to keep you on high alert and stop you from going out back into the world and reintegrating into the world. The only way it can do that, the only way it can slow you down is by giving you symptoms. Why does it want to slow you down? Well, essentially the whole reason a lot of these symptoms came up in the first place was because you reached your stress threshold, right? And the brain is just too much stimulus on the brain. So it starts to kind of shut everything down. I wouldn't say shut everything down, actually just dial everything down because it can't handle the amount of stimulus. So it'll do whatever it can to stop you from bringing on more stimulus. So going outside, seeing light, hearing sound, eating different foods, it'll start to lower your capacity to do those things because it just can't handle the stimulus, right? So I think this is symptom rotation. It sounds like classic symptom rotation. In terms of baseline, I'm not too sure what you mean by that. Is my baseline still in reach? I never really thought about it as having like a set baseline. What I saw it as, it's like you have this window of capacity. So let me actually share my screen. Let's see if we can get I shared this last time too. On the previous training, that was a really good training. If you missed that, watch the previous training I did. But I'll share it again because this is also going to help with understanding like how not to crash. Okay, so we have this here. The way I see your baseline is, let's say this is someone's, this is like a normal person's capacity, right? A normal person would be able to do this much. And if we go up here, this is full capacity for activities. Full capacity for activities up here. And then let's say down here, it's like, you know, sick and let's just say bedridden. Okay. If that's the lowest you can, one of the lowest you could get, and the highest is up here, right now, your body may only be granting you like, let me put this back here. Your body may only be granting you this much activity, right? So it's not that your body forgot or is unable to do these things. It just doesn't have access to doing those activities right now. So your body may only be granting you like this much capacity to do things. Let me actually make this even more clear. So there's also a limiter it puts on you, right? And I'll draw a little line here. Stroke. Okay. So it has this kind of limit, right? As you get better and better, your capacity for things goes up. And let's say this is the amount of activity you're doing. So I never saw a baseline as in like, okay, you have to do this amount of activity, then you sustain it and grow that baseline over time. It was more so like, what is this threshold that my body is allowing me to have? You know, and you can do pretty much anything within that. So sometimes, you know, you'll feel pretty solid. You'll have this much energy. Doesn't mean you have to use it all, right? But what's this window? What's this threshold that you can do activity within? You know, either you're doing a little more within your threshold or you're doing a little bit less. But over time, how this threshold limit works is let's say you start down here and you're bedridden, right? It's pretty low. That's your limit. You kind of stretch the boundaries a little bit. And as you stretch it, you increase the capacity, but then it goes back down, right? Then it drops, but it grows, then it goes back, grows, then it goes back, grows, then it goes back. It's kind of like if you had a rubber band, right? If you took a rubber band that was, if you took a rubber band that was this rubber band that was this short, and then you try to stretch it to here, just on the first stretch, it would probably snap, but you want to stretch it and then slowly let it come back, then slowly stretch it again, slowly bring it back, slowly stretch it. So you are almost like stretching your capacity in terms of doing activities. So if we go back here, the way that looks like is you increase activity, dial it back, increase activity, dial it back, increase activity, dial it back, increase activity, dial it back. And over time, this capacity threshold, it increases and decreases, increases and decreases. Now, here's the thing to remember, right? If, let's say this is, once you get to the top here, once you like kind of max out this threshold, it's pretty much like extreme discomfort. If you continue to push past that and you go all the way up here, well, guess what? That rubber band might snap, and then you end up having to rebuild from the bottom, right? So you don't want to go way over it. Yes, you're going to have some kind of discomfort, but if you have a lot of discomfort, you don't want to keep going and continuing or increasing activity, right? Because that's how you snap it. Another thing to remember here is as you increase activity and you dial it back, right? And this goes up, this goes down. On the way back, that's kind of what an adjustment period is, because you're going to have some kind of symptom flare up. Looks like this. So yeah, you increase activity. On the way back, when your capacity drops, it's very uncomfortable. You're flaring up, you have symptoms, and it's not just physical, it's actually a really big mental and emotional game you're playing here, because you start to ask yourself, did I do too much? Am I going to crash? But if you do it pretty, if you're pretty strategic about it and you don't just max out your limits every time you increase activity, then you'll be okay, right? You'll be okay. But basically that's how it works. Think about it like a rubber band that you're stretching, right? Does that make sense for people? We'll dive a bit deeper into it, but I just wanted to give you like a quick overview of what that expanding capacity looks like. Let's take a look at this. Fear of fear. I feel better physically, but then symptoms creep in and that creates doubt and the want to avoid these symptoms again. Yeah, so when it comes to symptoms, I think the sooner you accept the fact that they're going to be there and it is impossible to avoid them, the easier it is. It's kind of like trying to go to the gym and get stronger, but wanting to avoid getting sore, right? Or wanting to get straight A's and not having to study and sit there and how to focus your brain on it for long. It just comes with it. It just comes with it. And the sooner I learned that, I picked that up right away, because I saw that, okay, with growth comes discomfort. Okay, so if I want to go from wheelchair to walking, then I'm going to go through flare-ups. There is no way around it. So I kind of just accepted that it was going to be there, and then I just stopped fearing it. But also, you have to look at, what are you really fearing? Why are we afraid of the symptoms, right? And I remember for me in the beginning, I thought the symptoms would just kill me. I thought they would take me out, right? Not realizing that I actually control how uncomfortable those symptoms can be, right? If we go back to this over here, let's show another analogy. If you had a flare-up, right? Let's say this was a simple flare-up. Right? So it's nothing crazy. If this was a bar chart and I don't have my mouse on me today, but if this was a bar chart And this was level of discomfort on the side here. And this is like 10 out of 10. And this is 1 out of 10. Okay, if we had a smaller flare up that was maybe a 2 or 3 out of 10, let's just say it's really small here. So you had, let's just say, brain fog, palpitations, dizziness, and some fatigue. Those exact same symptoms, the exact same thing, could feel like this if you get emotional about it, right? And let me say, if you get very emotional about it, right? The more emotions you have during the flare-ups or adjustment periods, the more uncomfortable you're going to feel. Okay. Emotions, and more specifically, fear, will fuel these symptoms. So it can actually be the exact same physical symptoms, but your perception of the symptoms, it's going to be amplified when you have this, right? It's going to look like that. So the more emotions you have, imagine there's a small fire somewhere. The emotions, it's literally like taking a gasoline tank and pouring it on the fire. So once I realized this, that I could actually control the level of discomfort that I feel, it changed everything, because I knew that fear was a trap. The fear and the doubt, any kind of negative emotions, it was a trap. And I was making it way harder than it needed to be, because this just went from like a 2, 3, 4 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. And this is why I ended up crashing all the time before I learned these things. I didn't realize the emotions actually had a physical effect in my body, right? The fear. So on a microscopic level, right? Because we talk about emotions and fear, all this mindset stuff, you can't measure these things, right? So if we actually take a microscope and look into your brain, you can actually see how fear reroutes certain neural pathways. The more fear and doubt and negative emotions you have, the more you activate your amygdala, which is your survival center. The more your amygdala is active, the more your body has this danger response, the more hypersensitive it will be. So I saw it, like this part of my brain, the more fear I had, I saw it lighting up. And the more that lights up, I saw it like glowing orange, the worse of a time I'm going to have, essentially. Right. So I try to cut off that fear as soon as possible. And even if I couldn't cut it off, instead of pouring fuel on the fire, right, instead of having emotions with this, the opposite of emotion is logic. So I really tried to bring in logic into the equation whenever I was feeling terrified. Okay, logic. If you do that, how do I erase this arrow? The logic allows you to move in the opposite direction, right? Which is why we always say, just tell yourself it's a hypersensitive nervous system. And the more you understand what's going on, the less scary it is. Because logic is what makes this go down. Okay. Logic reduces the symptoms, right? So if we look at that example earlier, if you had, somewhat of a flare-up over here, you can actually reduce the amount of discomfort you feel by adding in more logic. Okay, and that can get cut in half. Sometimes it can go away, right, within a few hours. But the more logic you have, as in, okay, my nervous system, my hypersensitive nervous system, it's more stimulated because my threshold, it's reaching its limits and its capacity. So this was expected. I knew I was going to have these symptoms. This is all part of it. This is no different from exercising and then getting sore. And I know I'm going to get stronger. So now I'm not even looking at this as a bad thing. I'm actually seeing it as, oh, this is an opportunity. Like my nervous system is in an adjustment period, right? So the more logic you have around these things, the less symptoms you're going to feel. I'm not saying they're going to completely go away in a second or overnight, although that can happen, happens many times, but you're going to feel less symptoms overall than if you didn't apply logic, right? Because when you apply logic, you're actually training different parts of the brain, right? You're training your prefrontal cortex versus your survival brain, which is the amygdala. So is this making sense so far, though? You guys comment. Is this making sense? Logic can reduce these symptoms and the level of discomfort, whereas emotions are going to increase it. So you're essentially, you have the choice to pour fuel on the fire or water on the fire, right? And sometimes it's back and forth. Your brain will automatically pick up that gasoline tank and start pouring. You have to manually go in there and intercept that because that's its natural tendency. It wants to do that. Right. Is that making sense? Cool. Excellent. Peeps, don't override emotions with logic. Your emotions are logic in a way. They are energy moving through you, but you should just see them as symptoms and allow them to be there, just like the pain. I mean, could work. I personally, I felt the emotions. I acknowledged them. I was like, oh, what is that feeling? Oh, that's fear. Okay, interesting. And then I just went straight back to logic. So yeah, I didn't really ignore them. Like I saw the emotions there. But I didn't fuel them with more emotion. I like for all the emotions I had during recovery, I tried to be like 5 times more logical about things because I knew my emotions were running wild. I had to balance it out with more logic. But yeah, you don't want to be a robot and just completely ignore all emotions, right? Still be a human. But when it comes to recovery, when you're in that moment and you're flaring up and you're thinking, uh-oh, is this bad? What should I do? What should I do? Like, did I do too much? Am I going to crash? That's when you want to bring in logic, right? So yeah. All righty. Isn't stretching capacity working on a model of reconditioning? Yes, absolutely. You are reconditioning your nervous system. Stretching capacity, bringing it back. Stretching capacity, bringing it back. Yeah. So definitely, it is reconditioning your nervous system. But there's 2 things. There's multiple things to this. You're reconditioning your nervous system, and we look at things in different buckets, right? The way we've kind of approach this. There's the physical bucket. Let me actually yeah, let's do this. You have a physical bucket, cognitive bucket, and emotional bucket. I did this on the last training as well, so this may look familiar to some of you. And physical, we typically use blue. Cognitive, we typically use green. Emotional, typically use yellow in our nervous system analysis stuff. So this is like your overall threshold, or kind of all activities combined, right? But you have different buckets. You may have, let me move this up. You may have a pretty high physical capacity. or actually, no, let's take the typical person, right? Actually, they have low physical capacity. And then where is this line? And then they may have a higher cognitive capacity. So this is an example of this would be somebody who's able to go on their phone all day. They're in bed or sitting on the couch or at home, and they are able to scroll social media and YouTube and listen to podcasts. That's cognitive, typically higher. Now, also typically, emotional bucket is usually quite low. The tolerance for handling stressors, for handling life curveballs, even watching a scary movie or an action movie with violence, or maybe you scroll across social media and see something sad, you can be very emotionally moved by it, right? So there's different capacities here. Let me write them down. Physical, physical, emotional. Excuse me. Throat's really dry today. Physical, cognitive, and emotional, right? Now, over time, these things can build up, right? And let me move this. These things can build up. So let's say you're down here in the beginning, right? Physical capacity very low, and a full bar up here, this represents, like, again, full capacity for activities, right? If you're maxing out at the top. So you can't quite do all of those things. Typically how it works is you may expand in this area, right? And then you, at the same time, you're also kind of expanding cognitively. Because let's say you go from couch bound to now walking outside, right? Or even just stepping outside. In order to get outside, you have to kind of think. You have to walk through the hallways. You have to look at the doorknob, grab it, turn it, step outside, put your shoes on, things like that. So there's a few activities that are tied to physical activities because you do have to think and use your brain more as you do more physical things. For example, cooking. That's a physical activity, but it's also quite cognitive because you're thinking of the ingredients, turning the stove on. There's a certain order you do things in, right? So as you increase physical, naturally cognitive also goes up, and then you dial it back, and then the areas grow, right? You increase capacity. But where I would really, really focus on is this emotional bucket over here before anything else. Because if you improve your emotional capacity, well, guess what? You're not flaring up as much. And when you do flare up, it's not as intense, right? And it just helps you gain confidence knowing that, okay, whatever CFS throws your way, whatever your nervous system kind of throws at you, you're able to handle it and tolerate it without your mind going in a downward spiral or your emotions going in a downward spiral. So the higher this gets, and the way this increases is by learning to respond well and have that become a habit. Have responding well just become natural to you. And that happens with repetition. I mean, I had to respond well hundreds of times per day. When I say respond well, sometimes it took 2 seconds to respond well or 3 seconds. It's just bringing back logic into the equation to stop me from going on an emotional spiral, right? So as you increase this, as you get better and better emotionally, everything else becomes so much easier and these things fall into place. Now, what also happens is, and a way to avoid overdoing it is, let's say you start going for walks or you start going outside more or driving or just doing more things around the house like chores. That's a lot of physical activity. So let's say you increase this much here and you do 2 to 3 times more physically. Understand that if you also do that cognitively, you just added a lot of stimulation on your nervous system. So you would want to, especially in the beginning, and this is how we coach people. This is how we get them to, make progress without relapsing, is we typically, part of their personalized plan is we expand in one area and then dial it back. And then this increases. Maybe do it again, another progress cycle, and then we pull back. That increases. Maybe we do another time, then we pull back, and this increases. And then you'll hit a law of diminishing returns, meaning eventually your progress, physically, let's say you're making really good progress, it'll kind of cap off to the point where for some reason it's like not getting better, even though you're doing all the things you used to do. So when that happens and we start to hit a little bit of a plateau physically, that's when we switch to cognitive, right? Then we really focus on this. And now maybe we're just maintaining here physically. We're not adding on anything new, anything big, or you might even dial it back a little bit. So we have extra space in this threshold here. And then now we focus on expanding cognitively. So computer time, screen time, talking to friends on the phone, reading, playing instruments, increase that, bring it back down. And then this increases. Increase again, dial it back, and then this increases. So over time, you repeat this process until, your capacity is all the way up here, if not like even higher than a normal person's capacity, right? And that's where I feel like I'm at right now. My capacity is pretty high. And even a lot of my friends who've never had CFS, they're surprised at how I'm able to keep up with everything I'm doing, with the traveling and working and, balancing my social life while working out, doing all these things. They're surprised. So I would say I've surpassed where I was before, right? And you can keep building these thresholds. This is how you'll see some people get CFS who've never ran a marathon before, or never really traveled or did as much as they're doing right now. And now they're running marathons, and now they're more fit than they used to be. It's because once you learn how to build this threshold in any area, it doesn't have to stop once you recover. You can continue building, right? So yeah, it's like conditioning for your nervous system, especially different buckets of the nervous system, right? So yes, it is reconditioning of your nervous system. All right. Okay. I want to dispel this myth. Pushing through can cause permanent damage. No, it cannot. The reason why, I've seen so many people over push themselves. Some people even end up in the hospital because they over push themselves. I ended up in the hospital many times. There was a time when I couldn't roll over in bed, couldn't feed myself, couldn't even open my eyes because the lights in the room hurt. I had to wear earplugs and construction earmuffs over it, and I had to drink blended food. Yeah, at that time, I would have believed this, that pushing through can cause permanent damage, but no, it does not. We've seen severe cases make full comebacks. So pushing through cannot cause permanent damage. Unless you have other health issues going on, those may be affected. But when it comes to CFS and nervous system stuff, I personally don't believe that it causes permanent damage because I've just seen people with severe things. I've seen people bedridden for several years make full comebacks, right? And there's case studies all over our channel, right? You could watch it. But that's my stance on that. Let's take a look at this. I do little things and rest on the days I feel more energy. I do little things and rest, and on the days I feel more energy, I do more. Yep, that's how you do it. Just adapt to the capacity your nervous system is giving you. Yeah, for sure. So we allow the symptoms to be there, and in a sense, we can also get comfortable with them. Yeah, absolutely. You have to become okay with them being there because they're not going to go away like anytime soon. They're usually there in the background in some way. So the faster you can accept that, that's just part of it. That's like being sore from working out. I think the faster you'll get comfortable with them, and then they won't be as emotionally draining on you. Because the more the symptoms bother you, it's like an energy leak. It really is. And that energy, it's draining. That's taking away from all the other stuff you could be doing, right? So just accept that it's going to be there, and it's not a bad thing. That's your body actually trying to protect you, right? It's trying to keep you safe. It's not out to get you or punish you. Um, Start looking at the symptoms as just feedback. Like imagine a scientist in a lab, right? When he gets the results of the experiment, does he get emotional about it? Does he say, oh, I didn't want that to happen. Oh, that shouldn't happen. We need to do this and this. No, he looks at the data and says, oh, okay, interesting. So there's feedback from this thing, this experiment. Let's take action next. So I looked at my symptoms and my whole nervous system as a scientist, as logically as I could. So when I had symptom increases, I just said, oh, well, that's just feedback. That means my stimulation threshold, it's getting up there. So I should probably dial it back if I want the symptoms to go down. Now I could keep going. And my doctor even said, look, even though you're in a wheelchair right now, you could run outside. Even though you haven't walked for several months, you could run outside. It would be extremely uncomfortable. You would have a whole bunch of symptoms, but you're not going to die. And as soon as he said that, I said, oh, so, okay, so the symptoms can't kill me. Okay, cool. Because that was my biggest fear. I thought I would just stop breathing or something because I had shortness of breath or my heart, I'd have a heart attack because of the palpitations. But he said, no, we checked you for everything. You're not going to have a heart attack, or your lungs are completely fine. Your guts are fine. Your stomach's fine. Your muscles, we did a nerve conduction test where they like shocked my muscles and it was reacting. So they're like, your muscles are fine. So this is an issue with the software in your brain. We just need to update that software, but you're not going to die. And that kind of made sense to me. It would be extremely uncomfortable, but I wouldn't die. I can handle uncomfortable. I couldn't handle dying. So that helped a ton. Yeah. So Tasha, if it's rotating symptoms, can it be a last ditch effort to pull me back, hoping by responding well that I'll be back on track and it's not a full do-over? Yeah. Don't even put that in your mind of it being a full do-over. It's not. If it was going to be a full do-over, I mean, you'd be feeling way worse. You wouldn't be able to look at the screen or type. So yeah, it's a last ditch effort for sure. We see it all the time. We call them recovery curveballs. We even have a whole section, a module for it in what we teach. Like I'll show you. It's literally called recovery curveballs. Recovery curveballs. Yeah, here it is. Symptom rotation. It's a real thing. Symptom rotation involves symptoms changing in intensity and type during recovery. This can cause new symptoms to appear or old symptoms to resurface. It's a common experience where the body tries to keep you in survival mode by presenting different symptoms. So, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's probably what's happening. So yeah, just keep on going, respond well. Learning to sit with discomfort and unpleasant emotions is so crucial. Accept them and let them pass on their own. Yes. Wise words. We actually just released inside the academy. It's part of a special announcement today. I got a gift for you guys. But we have an emotional processing tool guide. It's like, okay, what does that even mean in the context of CFS? How do you process emotions? I'll cover that in a little bit. And I've rejoined my gym after 4.5 years. Thanks, Miguel. Awesome. That's great news, man. So happy to hear that. Amazing. Socializing and having fun is the hardest challenge for my CFS, harder than housework. I always wake up with a bad setback the day after being happy with my family for a few hours. Well, first of all, I'm glad you're able to be happy and spend time with the family for a few hours. But let's analyze this here in terms of the language. I always wake up with a bad setback. What do you mean by setback? Is it an adjustment period, like a little flare up? That's because if it is, I mean, that's supposed to happen. When you do activities, you're gonna have that's stimulating for your nervous system. So your nervous system is going to be adapting to the new level of stimulus, right? It's kind of like saying, kind of like going to the gym and saying, I had a bad setback because I'm sore. Is that really a setback, or was that supposed to happen? That's part of the process. How else would you get stronger? How else would you increase capacity? Right. So another way I looked at this was if I did something really fun, like when I was with my friends, I was really happy. And the next day, I'd feel pretty wiped out. My skin would start burning. I'd start getting headaches and brain fog. But I told myself, was it worth it? Because I know I'm going to bounce back and get stronger as long as I respond well and I don't see this as a setback. If I start seeing this as a bad setback, I'm going to start feeling down on myself. I'm going to start feeling upset. That's pouring fuel on the fire, essentially, versus seeing it with logic and saying, oh, of course I feel rough today. I did something last night. And I rarely do those activities. So, I mean, what did I think was going to happen? Right. So it's just part of it. I mean, like I said earlier, the sooner you can accept that in order to get better, you are going to have to go through discomfort, no different from going to the gym and being sore. You can't get stronger if you don't get sore, right? It's just impossible. You can't grow if there is no discomfort, but you can choose that level of discomfort you feel. So if you wake up feeling like you had a bad set, or I don't want to use that word, bad, good, whatever, it's just data, right? Symptoms are just feedback from the body. Don't put a label on it, good or bad. But if you have symptoms the next day, maybe next time with the family, just instead of doing a few hours, just do 1 hour to start. And then once you get better at handling those symptom flare-ups, then you could add on to that time, but only add on as much activity as you can handle in terms of emotions. Every time you increase activity, I don't want to say every time, most of the time when you increase activity, it comes with it an equivalent level of flare-up, right? That's what can happen, especially in the beginning. Later on in the recovery, that may not happen as much, but just understand that if you do this much activity, yeah, you will most likely have this much symptoms, right? If you do this level of activity, you'll have this much symptoms. If you do this level, you have this much symptoms, right? What amplifies those symptoms again is if you start getting very emotional about it, because you can also do this level of activity. If you get really emotional about the symptoms, well, guess what? Now the symptoms are up here when they could have been down here. So you have the power to mitigate the level of discomfort you feel, to reduce the discomfort that you feel. You'll still feel the symptoms. They'll still be there. It'll still suck. But you can kind of control the dial on how much it sucks, really, with your emotions. So I wouldn't look at it as a setback, actually. I would reframe that. But in terms of specific stuff to do, next time I just dial it back a little bit more. Stay for maybe an hour instead of a few hours. That way you'll be able to emotionally handle the adjustment period that comes after. Some people can't be logical though, or they just aren't as much as others. Well, being logic, it really comes down to how much do you understand about this. The more you understand what's happening with the nervous system in terms of if there's one thing to learn, it's the stress threshold, right? And how maxing out your stress threshold equals more symptoms. The more you understand that, you don't even really need to force yourself to be logical. It's just understanding. Hmm, it's like, okay, it's like when you're growing up and you go outside, right? Okay, no, it's not a good analogy. Um, I'm trying to think of an analogy for this. Eventually, it becomes common sense, right? Where you start to see, you start to feel, you start to put a picture to how you feel. So the way I looked at it is I always had this kind of, it's almost like in a video game, like a health bar, but instead of a health bar, it's a stimulation bar, right? And I could feel, depending on the symptoms I was feeling, or how much energy I had, or how clear my thinking was, I could tell where I was on that stimulation threshold. So it wasn't even just logic, it was more like common sense. It's like, oh, okay, if I'm feeling this rough today, then that means I'm pretty stimulated. I'm nearly maxing out my threshold. So that means I got to dial it back a little bit, right? It's kind of, eventually it becomes common sense. In the beginning, you have to manually remind yourself, but it's kind of like, you know, if my little cousin, he wakes up, he looks outside, is it raining or is it sunny? Okay, it's raining or it's sunny today. Okay, that means I'm not going to wear a rain jacket outside. It's just like common sense, right? So if I'm feeling a whole bunch of symptoms, I'm not going to go and do more things. And when I am feeling a bunch of symptoms, I know it's because, okay, this threshold, that means I'm up here. I just got to dial it back, and if I dial it back a little bit, that threshold is going to increase, over a few days or a few weeks, because that's just how the nervous system works. It's not luck, it's not chance. There's a reason so many people are recovering nowadays, in all different types of programs, or even just with free YouTube content. We're saying relatively the same thing if you think about it. Like the things I talk about, the things Raylan Nagel talks about, Chronic Comeback, Dan Buglio, we're all kind of talking about the same thing. It's just different avenues to get there. So recovery, it's not luck. It's actually very logical. There are certain things you could do step by step to have predictable progress and get predictable results. So yeah, it, just like anything you learn in school, eventually it would become not common sense. It would become second nature. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay. It's always going to be that same number. 10 divided by 2 = 5. Okay. If my nervous system threshold is at high capacity and I'm feeling lots of symptoms, I'm always going to dial it back. I'm always going to respond well. And if I do those things, that will equal the threshold increasing. No ifs, buts, or maybes. That's going to happen every single time, right? And if it's not happening, you have to be honest with yourself. Are you really responding well, right? So I had to ask myself that a few times. Sometimes I'd increase activity. I'd kind of go through a progress cycle, but I wouldn't complete the progress cycle because I wasn't responding as well. And I didn't level up after that. I was like, how come I'm not really getting better, or not getting better? I'm not able to do more physically. And it's because I was like paying too much attention to the symptoms. It's counting down the days to when it was going to go away. When in an adjustment period, actually, here's another tip. Don't ever count the days in an adjustment period or weeks. Don't ever time an adjustment period to see how long it lasts. And don't just sit around waiting for it to go away. Because I guarantee you, if you wait for the symptoms to go away, they will stick around even longer. You have to focus on um, doing other activities that are not even related to CFS. You have to do things that make your brain almost forget you even have CFS, whether that's listening to a good podcast that doesn't require physical activity, or hanging out with friends And just that 30-minute window of good conversation where you're forgetting you have CFS, those are good for you, right? Or other activities, playing guitar, playing the piano, playing music, doing hobbies, painting, things like that. So yeah, that's what I would do. Alrighty, let me look at these comments over here. Some people, here it is. Yes, it does. To almost stand back and observe the symptoms from a distance. Absolutely. Yes. You are not your symptoms, right? Symptoms are just feedback from the nervous system. They're just reactions in the body. I looked at it as, I really try to look at it from, what do you call it? A perspective that made it make sense. So the symptoms in my body, let's say my arms were burning and my legs were on fire and I was just having lots of brain fog. I just saw it as like, okay, the software in my brain, there's just a few glitches in there. That's it. It's a few glitches, and I looked at it like a factory, right? And some of the piping or the wiring, it was a bit loose or it wasn't functioning properly, and there were like some sparks flying in there. Just one little section of the brain, but that was the root cause of why my arm was burning. So I wasn't even worried about the arm or my heart. My heart was skipping, or my lungs when I was having shortness of breath. I didn't even see that as the real issue. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's uncomfortable. That's where I feel it. But really, what I'm seeing is, oh, there's some loose wiring up here. There's some kind of software glitch that's going on up here. So I need to work on that. I need to work on responding well to the symptoms. And that in itself is going to rewire what's going on up here, right? That's going to help update that software up there. I never really try to focus on the symptoms in my body. Now, to give some relief, sometimes I would put like a cold towel on my neck, or I would take a cold shower or cool shower. I would use a massage gun or massage thing and put on my arms and legs and stuff. That helped distract me from discomfort. But I knew full and well that that wasn't really going to solve it. It would help temporarily in the moment, but yeah, I really had to separate myself from the symptoms, and I had to trace back the symptoms to what is the actual root cause. So it wasn't really a symptom issue; it was like a software issue, and I saw that every single time. So no matter what symptom it was, I could have 30 symptoms. It all traced back to one problem, one glitch, which was a software glitch in my brain. So I saw it all as one problem. I didn't see it as 30 or 40 or 50 different symptoms. I used to, until I learned this stuff, and having it all under one category of like hypersensitive nervous system issue, that helped a lot. Yeah. For me, it worked when I rested during the AP adjustment period. This strategy often doesn't work anymore. Why? I'm stuck at 70%. I haven't changed anything. I'm responding well to symptoms. For me, it worked. Rested. I mean, I'd have to see. It's hard to know without knowing the specifics of your situation. This is the kind of stuff we dive into, like with our one-on-one stuff. I mean, clearly there's a roadblock if you are stuck at a certain point. Also, and I've said this in about a few hundred videos, do not measure recovery by percentages. Like, completely throw that out the window. The reason why is whether you're in an adjustment period or out, that's going to determine what percentage you feel you're at. Someday you're at 84%, another day you're at 61, another day you're at 78. Get rid of this whole percentage thing. And I promise you, like, that actually might even be your roadblock, is measuring how far along you are in recovery. Just know that at some point in the very near future, you're going to be recovered from this and you won't have to think about CFS anymore. But the more you focus on these percentages, I've seen it so many times, like at least a couple hundred times with people making great progress, but they kind of hit this plateau and then they start to become impatient and they start waiting for that progress to come versus focusing on just living life and adding activities in, or really just getting what do you call it? You just really focusing on other activities outside of CFS, right? I would say if I had to take a guess of what percentage I was when I no longer identified as having CFS or being sick, I was probably 40% functional. But at that point, I could drive, I could go out, I could see friends, I could cook. Yeah, I still had some symptoms, but I was like, this is no longer a CFS issue anymore. This is a hypersensitive nervous system. And yeah, I mean, I was recovering, but I saw it as like, oh, I'm just tuning up my nervous system. I'm tuning up the neural pathways in my brain. That's it. I'm not broken. I'm not stuck somewhere. We're just tuning up stuff. And then sometimes when you're tuning things up, you might have slower progress. Sometimes I've seen it a lot where people make a ton of progress, kind of flatline a little bit, and then after that, they shoot up and make a bunch of other progress. It's actually part of our expected recovery trajectory. I'll show you an example of what I mean by that. So for example, we have something called a diagnostic assessment. So it looks like, let me rename this document just to protect identities. I'll show you a diagnostic assessment. Where is it? Okay, here it is. For example, yeah, so we typically see a big jump in the beginning. So this is an example. This person is semi-functional. Based on their data, this was their trajectory, but big increase in the beginning, then kind of flatline, and then towards the end it goes up. Because typically, you see a lot of changes. And then here, especially when people get into that semi-functional, functional place, they're still considering themselves in this recovery phase, right? Sometimes they get even more hyperfixated on it than they were down here, right? There's this interesting spot in recovery where once you start seeing the stuff working, you get really excited. Then you start introducing these activities. You start hiking, start spending time with family, you start going out more, maybe even travel a little bit. And it's like this huge dopamine rush of like, wow, I'm getting my life back. This is great. But that acceleration of back into life, it can happen very quick. It can happen in a few months or over several months. So part of your brain expects it to always be like that and expects you to always be making that amount of progress every month. But realistically, you have most of your life back up here. So there is a law of diminishing returns, right? For example, with athletes, right? Let's say you have a high school kid. If he works with a world-class coach, if some high school basketball player worked with Michael Jordan's basketball coach, he would make a ton of progress in the beginning, right? But after a handful of months, he wouldn't be making the same level of progress in month 6 versus month 1 because most of the changes have already been implemented. Towards the end, it's really fine-tuning different things. Maybe in the first month, he had like 100% improvement. Second month, it was like 80. Third month, it was like 50. By month 6, you can only improve at such a high rate for so long eventually you become more and more like a normal person, like in terms of recovery. So to get over this hump over here, there has to be this identity shift. And that's probably what I would recommend for you is see yourself as optimizing your nervous system now, not really recovering, right? And some people may say, "Oh, you're lying to yourself because you're still in recovery, you still feel symptoms." Yeah, I understand that. But to get past this hump, there needs to be almost this shedding of the old identity that I'm still sick, I'm still kind of broken, to focusing more on just living life, right? And the more you can live life, obviously within your limits, don't go out and push yourself like crazy, but the more you can focus on those things and you start to see yourself as, I'm not broken anymore, the faster your brain comes out of that survival state. It sounds like it still has a few of its guards up, right? And that's why the whole percentage thing isn't my favorite thing. Actually, it's we advise people against that because that is what keeps that identity sticky, right? And when that is the identity, it keeps the brain in survival mode, right? So I hope that makes sense. You know, um, I did have this though. I did have a period of maybe, I don't know, several months where my capacity felt about the same, at least physically. But also, I would ask you to look deeper, even deeper. What other areas of your life are you improving? Like, are you sharper at communication? Do you have faster memory recall? Do you have clearer thinking? Do you are you able to stay up a bit later? Can you tolerate more food? Are you more creative? Because not all the gains, like we covered earlier, not all the gains will happen in one area. So maybe your physical capacity is staying the same, but cognitively it's through the roof. Or maybe even emotionally. Maybe you're able to tolerate more stress. Or maybe there's other things happening in your life. Maybe you moved or started a new job. Maybe finances are tough. Maybe something happened in the family. All these things can affect the pace of recovery as well. But nonetheless, whenever I felt like I was in this lull, this kind of plateau, I just said, oh, well, what's the best thing to do in the situation? Respond well to even that thought that I'm stuck. So let me just focus on doing what I like to do, which at the time was edit videos, spend time with friends, eat good food. I was like, eventually the results will come. And it came. But I really had to focus on living life versus waiting to get to 100%, you know. Alrighty. What's the connection between neck, trapezius, and back pain, tension, stiffness, and this condition? Yeah, great question. So when our body is in this kind of self-defense mode and survival mode, we tend to tense up quite a bit. Whenever we feel like we're in danger, we naturally tense up. And with CFS, you always kind of feel like you're in danger. But the danger isn't from external, it's from within. It's from like your symptoms attacking you. Like that could be a belief you have. So we can become very guarded, right? We can become very tense. So essentially, that's what it is. I found my neck was really tight, like especially when I was sleeping at night. I'd try to sleep, and then after 30 minutes, I noticed my neck and my shoulders, they were like rock hard. I was flexing them, and I had to manually take a deep breath, relax them. 30 minutes later, I couldn't sleep, and I'm like, wow. Over that 30-minute period, they tensed up again. So it's just coming from a very stressed nervous system, basically. So I would suggest stretching it. There's a simple stretch. You just reach over, grab like your ear area or your head, pull straight to the side. You'll feel a nice stretch back here. You could also look at they call it, there's a saying, it's like smell your armpit and then pull down, right? So yeah, very common. The further you come in recovery, the more you can and should sow in an AP. Resting is not good in those stages. I'm not sure. the more you can and should sow in an AP. Maybe it was misspelled. Okay, here we go. Good question. I'm currently suffering a quick sickness additionally to my CFS, and I find it hard to distinguish between my CFS and my infection symptoms. Yeah, in this case, if there's a real infection, prioritize that. Take the antibiotics if you need to. Get a lot of rest. There's definitely going to be some crossover, so you'll probably feel more tired and a few other symptoms. Energy is going to be down. But it's interesting, a lot of times when people get sick when they have CFS, a lot of the CFS symptoms tend to go away and they feel the sickness symptoms because the brain and body prioritize the real danger over the anticipated danger. CFS is anticipated danger, essentially. So, yeah, I would treat it like an adjustment period, essentially. Pull back, get more rest than you're used to, definitely respond well, and don't worry about how this affects your recovery. We've seen a lot of people with long COVID get COVID again after making progress, and they bounce back just as fast, if not faster. They actually treat it like an adjustment period, and they level up after getting COVID. So I would treat it like an adjustment period. All right, Tasha, Miguel, do you take on clients or only have other coaches? So I don't take on one-on-one clients, but I am in all of the chats for people in Platinum. So people can reach out to me anytime, tag me, ask me questions. There's a bunch of those chats. So I'm in probably 250 chats actually, in addition to, spending time in the community, answering questions like that. So in a way, yeah, I am still coaching. I've had recent studies show ME/CFS is genetic. Yeah, I've heard about this. This study has been going around like crazy in the CFS community. I think it's Decode ME or something. Is there such thing that some people are more genetic weak to these things? Your take on these findings? Yeah, I find it really interesting how people got super excited about this. They got super excited that, wow, they found this genetic thing. They found a cause, so it's a real thing. But we always knew it was a real thing. And of course it's genetic. Like, why can some people just abuse their bodies and not get CFS and other people do get CFS? Of course it's genetic. So I'm not sure why people are surprised. But also, I mean, as somebody who puts out so much content out there and tries to help people, a lot of those people who got excited about that were the same people who were hating on me. Like, they were saying, oh, Miguel doesn't know what he's talking about. You can't recover, even though we have 70 plus hours of interviews with people recovering. We have thousands of screenshots, people recovering. It's interesting how they'd get excited about that, but they completely disregard the approaches that I'm sharing, or like Raylan's sharing, or other people in the space, the mind and body approach or brain and body approach, because I think they're getting excited because if they found something in the genetics, then maybe someday they can create a magic pill that will fix that genetic thing. But you don't have to wait that long. You can actually fix it yourself. So I thought it was really interesting, seeing the excitement around it. When some people give me the exact opposite response, when we literally have something that works. So it was just interesting. I didn't dive too deep into it. I've tried speaking at these CFS conferences. I've applied, I've submitted presentations with case studies. I mean, let me see if I could pull it up. We had a whole approach to this stuff. Let me actually show you guys, because everything I'm teaching you, there's actually a process to all of this. Like, there's data. Let me fly through this real quick. There's like improvement data. There's, improvements in different symptoms, things like that. There's all this data on how much people improve. And what we were going to show them, well, my team and I put this together. But what I was going to present to all these doctors to try to help them, I was going to give this system to them so they can use it, was really, how do we help people get better, right? If someone's bedridden, what do they experience? How do we get them better? And we actually have a step-by-step process. It's like, okay, if they're not moving, this is considered like hospitalized, eye mask, headphones, you can't do much. How do you get them better? Well, bedbound moving, bedbound sitting up assisted, bedbound sitting up non-assisted. And then there's certain action items over here we have them do. Then there's couchbound, right? What do you do in that sense? Okay, move around the bedroom, move outside the bedroom, take walks outside the bedroom, spend more time outside the bedroom, build tolerance outside the bedroom, become housebound, housebound tolerance, gently moving inside the homes and doing chores. So every stage, it's actually pretty step by step, right? Or even like reintegrating back into life, introducing exercise, reintegration into part-time work, reintegration into full-time work. The way we know where to put somebody in this entire timeline is with a nervous system health assessment. So it's knowing someone's symptoms, knowing even what is their brain score, right? How much do they react to symptoms physically? How much do they react emotionally? How much do they react cognitively or mentally? What is their capacity balance of cognitive versus physical, right? So little things like that. Even with case studies, like Karen, really rough shape, 66 years old. She was biking, playing the piano, hiking. Nikki was really rough, allergic to water at her worst. And she went kayaking, eating pizzas, brownies, cooking ice cream, having her life back. Nicole, shout out to Nicole, hair falling out, all of these things, very well documented with medical reports and everything. And there she was ATVing in Bali on a family trip. So I just thought it was really interesting. I've tried sharing these things to the medical community. Some of them are very open, and most of them, though, are completely closed off. So yeah, I thought the study was very interesting. Yeah, people overinterpret the genetic findings. The genetics doesn't mean CFS is a specific disease. It just means that people with certain activated genes are more likely to create the environment where CFS can develop. Exactly. Like, in a nutshell, I think you nailed it with that. You have a higher likely chance to develop CFS. But if you're watching this right now, you have CFS, right? And all CFS is, it's a hypersensitive nervous system. So basically, our nervous systems, the sensitivity, it was just turned up a little bit. It's a little more sensitive. Doesn't mean it has to stop you from living life. Doesn't mean you can't go out and fulfill your potential. Because I would argue that having a more sensitive nervous system is actually like a superpower. Because when you know how to use that, you could do some great things. You could do some great things. A lot of people with this stuff, they tend to have ADD or ADHD tendencies, perfectionist traits, type A personalities, go, go, go. We have very active minds, right? So if you learn how to direct that energy in your brain, in your mind, it's almost like we have an overflow of energy in our brains and nervous system. So if you learn how to direct it in the right place, that's like a superpower, right? And that's something we've taught all the coaches, even the people who are recovering through our system. That's what we teach, right? How can you use this to your advantage? And there is definitely a way to use it to your advantage without feeling all the symptoms. And you can definitely surpass where you were before. In fact, you'll hear it in almost every recovery video that people are grateful they got this, because now they're so much better than they were before. So we're almost an hour and a half in. Before we go, I want to take a few minutes to show you guys something we've been quietly working on behind the scenes, something I wish I had when I was in your guys' shoes, right? And it's the brand new 30-day recovery roadmap, right? We're actually going to make this go live on Friday. And this is part of the free gift I'm going to announce today. All right, so let me actually share my screen here. So some of you are in the academy, some of you have heard about it before, but essentially it used to be a whole bunch of videos here, right? This is how we help people get better. This is our mid-tier program. But we used to have a bunch of videos here, different categories. It was very confusing and overwhelming. So now we have a 30-day roadmap, right? And the reason we created this was just more structure, more organization, like more step-by-step. This brand new 30-day recovery roadmap, we built this for the person who wakes up each day just feeling overwhelmed with decision-making. Also just stuck between crash fear, but also research burnout, and just wants to know, what do I do today? Right? So each day, if you look here, you get one simple focus, right? Not 10 things to figure out, not like a fire hydrant hose of information coming at you, not 5 different methods to research, just one thing that moves the needle, and it keeps your nervous system feeling safe while you do it, right? So for example, each day, this is like adjustment periods, right? Understanding adjustment periods and progress cycles. Day 5, connecting the dots, right? And there's some short videos in here, and there's also going to be some action steps to follow. And basically, you just follow it day by day, right? And that way, all the content is built upon one another. So you notice each day has a short video lesson, usually less than 10 minutes. Some of them even like 2 minutes. The shorter, the better, with clear action steps, right? And that way you don't have to decide what to do or when to do it. That decision fatigue that's been draining you, like, got rid of that. So you just open the day's module, press play, and follow the roadmap. Also, another thing is this isn't just a bunch of random videos we stitched together, right? This was built after studying the recoveries and journeys of over 2,000 thriver cases, right, or client cases, and analyzing what actually helps people gain momentum, especially in their first month, right? When they're exhausted, when they're anxious, when they're stuck, kind of confused and overwhelmed. So we've tested this with people who are bedbound, people who were skeptical, people who had tried everything, supplements, medications, all that. But we saw the same pattern. When they had structure, when they stopped guessing, they finally made some lasting progress, right? So the roadmap is only part of what you get. Alongside it, you also get access to live recovery coaching calls. These are calls where you don't even need to speak. You can just listen, take notes, and apply what works. So for example, as we started this call today, there was an onboarding call with a bunch of new thrivers. There's different types of calls too. Solving roadblocks around kind of like how I run this call, but with more interaction, people asking questions, sharing wins. So there's a lot of recovery golden nuggets in there. But another bonus we've added recently, I'm really excited about, is a support system or caregiver call. We found that nothing really had this feature, right? But it's super important for your family or your support system to understand what's even going on, what you're doing, and also how they can help you. So you can invite your partner or parent or support system to join these calls. We have them every week. That way they understand exactly what's happening in your body and how to support you, right? Without pressuring you, without any judgment or things like that. And there's also tons of replays you can watch in here, right? So in the past year or two, we've had tons and tons of calls. So all you do is click up here, go to call replays, and you can watch the calls. But if you go to the classroom here, there's a golden nugget vault. So some of the best highlights from calls, and there's tons of different topics here, which is pretty cool. So yeah, the caretaker calls are awesome, right? And let me go back to the 30 days here. So yeah, we've been working on this, put a few hundred hours into this over the last several months. But if you've ever said, I just need someone to walk me through this step by step, like, Miguel, your YouTube videos are great, but there's a lot of information. I kind of don't know where to start. That's literally what this is, right? It's built for some of the most fragile parts of recovery, and to help you gain traction. The first 30 days, when you really start implementing something new, is where that doubt, that panic, that overthinking are at their peak. And I think we can all agree, if you're watching this right now, you don't need more information. Like, what you need is an actual plan. You need support, right? You need some kind of structure to this. So you guys will see some posts coming out about this for the next couple days, but on Friday is when this goes live. It'll be really cool. And then we actually have a 7-day free trial, so you can check it out. No pressure. Just come in, follow day one, feel it out, and then decide if you want to continue. But I think within that first 7 days, you should feel a definite difference. But I just wanted to announce it today. Again, we open this up on Friday, so if you join today, it wouldn't be available. But I'll put a link in the chat there in case you guys are interested in checking it out. But yeah, that will wrap up this call. I need to drink a ton of water. My throat is very, very sore. But you'll see some posts about it. Other than that, hope you guys got a lot of golden nuggets from this and information to help. I'd say really study, or really try to understand the stress threshold. That's really going to help. And the more you understand that, the easier recovery is, right? And look at the last live Q&A I did on the YouTube channel, because I think I've talked about it for a whole hour with visuals about how that cognitive, physical, and emotional bucket works. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Take it easy, and I will see you on the next one. See you guys.